Lord of the Mysteries. Chapter 1359. Early morning. Klein watched as scarlet flames suddenly appeared and engulfed him. When the sparks scattered, his figure had already vanished from St. Samuel Cathedral. In an ordinary inn's empty room, Klein walked out of the sudden rising flames and began setting up a bestowment ritual. Soon, the mysterious door formed by candlelight opened. An ancient accessory flew out from the endless darkness and landed on the altar. This accessory seemed to be made out of gold. It looked like a slender bird, surrounded by a pair of wings formed by white flames. The bronze eyes shimmered with layers of light as though there were illusory doors hidden within. Klein sincerely thanked the Evernight goddess, ended the ritual, and picked up the golden bird-shaped accessory. This seems to be the image of the legendary phoenix ancestor Greg race. Beyond this ancient death's own pathway, she had apparently grasped partial authority of the apprentice pathway. This is a preliminary conclusion from the city ruins in the forsaken land of the gods that believed in the phoenix. It's no wonder most ancient gods find it difficult to control their emotions. They were on the edge of madness. No, they were constantly teetering between madness and rationality. Before the first blasphemy slate appeared, none of the Beyonder creatures had the concept of a sequence pathway. They only had the concept of convergence, reproduction, and blind attempts. As Klein carefully examined the golden bird-shaped accessory, he sighed inwardly. As the owner of Sapphira Castle, he could sense that there was a subtle connection between the accessory and the river of eternal darkness. So it can contain the river water of the river of eternal darkness? Yes, the river water of the river of eternal darkness is definitely not river water in the true sense of the phrase, but an abstract concept or symbol. Klein nodded in thought and threw the golden bird-shaped accessory into Sapphira Castle, sealing it in the junk pile to prevent any unnecessary accidents. On a mountain peak outside Byam City, the Red Angel evil spirit watched as the edge of the sea gradually lit up as an orange sun slowly left the horizon. At some point in time, a young man wearing a pointed hat and a classic black robe appeared beside him. The man played with a crystal monocle and wore it on his right eye. It was Amon, who had become Mr. Error. Sauron Einhorn Medici turned his head and glanced at Amon. The sacrifice you provided was actually the original body. If it wasn't my true body, how could I have the time to steal the ritual and replace Bethel? Amon replied with a smile. As a qualified conspirer, you shouldn't have not thought of this. The Red Angel evil spirit scoffed. How would I know that you weren't trying to trick me? Perhaps you'd predicted my prediction? Amon smiled and didn't answer directly. Instead, he took out a strange crown covered in rust and blood. This is your reward. He threw the item to Sauron Einhorn Medici. After the Red Angel evil spirit caught the strange crown, he was somewhat surprised. Wow, you actually didn't try to go back on your word. Doing something that doesn't match your expectations is also a form of deception. Amon pinched the monocle on his right eye and said with a smile, I'm looking forward to you becoming the Red Priest and devouring that demoness. When that happens, your image will definitely be extremely interesting. As Amon said this, his smile carried an unconcealable sense of warped humor. Sauron Einhorn Medici fell silent for a moment before saying, I don't think it will be very different from how I am now. Two bloody mouths opened on both sides of his face before quickly closing. Amon adjusted the monocle on his right eye and looked to the other side of the sea. The situation in the western continent seems interesting. With that said, the present Mr. Error, the former angel of time, turned into light and dissipated. The Red Angel evil spirit looked in the direction of where Amon was looking at and tossed the strange crown in his hand. On both sides of his face, the bloody mouths appeared once again as they said, After absorbing this Beyonder characteristic, you'd better stay away from Bansi. If you wish to grow breasts and have your body swell up, you can continue staying there. Medici curled his lips and said, Isn't this something you both wish for? Facing the altar filled with materials and artifacts, Klein raised his right hand and snapped his fingers. The table in front of him instantly became empty and clean. All the junk had been split up in categories and returned to their original location. This was a miracle that stemmed from one of Klein's accumulated wishes. Compared to the past miracle invokers and attendants of mysteries, the miracles I can create can be described as quite varied. It's very practical, including but not limited to building houses, interior design, garbage classification, and environment protection. Klein looked at the cleared and laughed self-deprecatingly. He then opened the door and left. He wanted to return to the real world and return to human society to strengthen his humanity and stabilize his mental state. His problem now was relatively problematic. If he directly sought Miss Justice's treatment before first suppressing the awakening will of the celestial worthy of heaven and earth for blessings, he would only contaminate her and allow his psychiatrist to suffer mental illnesses. Of course, if Miss Justice had reached sequence 2, the effects wouldn't be too great. The current backlund had been rebuilt, and the number of pedestrians coming and going had returned to their previous peak. Just as Klein pushed open the inn's door, he heard all sorts of voices. Wait! Wait! Fresh fish from Pritz Harbor. It has plenty of meat and little bones. It's great for frying. Special ginger beer matched with muffins and potato wedges. Hot and fresh oyster soup. The freshest vegetables. Most of the noise came from the street vendors, and some came from a small number of passengers who were chasing the public carriage or pedestrians who were knocked down by people in a rush. The early morning rush painted such a noisy, sonorous, and chaotic scene. Klein listened to these unfamiliar yet familiar shouts and silently looked at the scene in front of him. He didn't move for a few minutes. Only when a thief came close did he put his hands into the black coat's pockets and walk towards the nearest coffee shop. A cup of good coffee, a set of mutton stewed with peas, and a piece of oatmeal bread, Klein said to the affordable coffee shop's owner. A total of 11 pence, the boss said after a mental calculation. Then he added, the price of everything is rising now. Klein didn't say anything. He took out a 1 soldi note from the junk pile in Sapphira Castle and handed it to the boss. He then found a seat by the window which wasn't very greasy. He took out a few pieces of tissue to line the table. Following that, Klein placed a piece of letter paper on top of it and took out a dark red fountain pen. After watching the morning scenery and pedestrians, he finally wrote, Dear Mr. Isaac, I haven't written to you for another month, because I had no choice but to sleep for some time. This isn't because I'm hurt, but because the ritual requires it. When I woke up and walked into human society again, on the streets, it suddenly reminded me of the life I had when I was in Tianjin. At that time, it was always very noisy in the morning. A large number of citizens would leave their homes, rushing to the factories or companies. The mobile peddlers gathered on the street and peddled their vegetables, food, and fruits of questionable quality. They were always cheap. I would always protect my wallet and carefully squeeze through them before heading to the station and wait for the public carriage with many people. I worked at the Blackthorn Security Company at 36 Zeeland Street and had a group of good colleagues. Dunn Smith was the captain, the supervisor there. He was an experienced, kind, and responsible beyonder. He had a mild personality and was experienced in his job. He also cared for all the members in the team, and his only flaw was his bad memory. For matters which weren't too important, he might forget about it the moment he turned around. He often said, Hold on, there's still another thing. Of course, there was a reason why. He had lost too many companions. He hoped that they would all stay in his dreams, so he often became lost as to which matter was reality, and which belonged to dreams. Old Neil was my first mysticism teacher. The most useful skill he taught me was expense claims. He always designed strange ritualistic magic, hoping to obtain help from the goddess. Some of it succeeded, while others produced ridiculous accidents. Until today, I can still recall them. He was a very kind person. Even when he was seeking to fulfill his everlasting dream, he didn't wish to harm others. Leonard is a poet with his own secrets. At first, I thought he was very mysterious, and a hidden expert that needed attention to be placed on. Later, I realized that he was a crude, simple, impulsive, rebellious, aloof, and rude young man. Furthermore, he really doesn't have any literary talent, so he could only rely on memorizing things to complete the acting requirement. Yes, he barely has some merits. He's considered rather brave, and he has sharp intuition and terrifying reasoning abilities in certain matters. However, this is limited to certain matters. Fry was a cold-looking beyonder who no one dared to approach. But in fact, he has a sense of responsibility and a warm heart. He would always extend his hand when others needed help. Kenley was very short. He used to be a civilian staff member, and he then took the initiative to apply to become an official member. He was quite smart, but he would never decline a case. Every time he played cards, he would talk about his fiancée. Roseanne is the receptionist at the Blackthorn Security Company. She's lively and lazy, and she's loved by everyone. To us, she's like a younger sister. She also likes every single one of us, but she also hates all the official members because her father was once an official beyonder who later died in the course of duty. Perhaps, in her heart, official members were equivalent to people who received a notice that they were infected with a critical illness. Mrs. Oriana is an accountant, a victim of a supernatural case. She's delicate and gentle, and she pursues an exquisite life. She usually doesn't speak much, but she takes good care of everyone and doesn't make things difficult for us regarding finances. For example, she rarely rejects old Neil's expense claims, no matter how ridiculous the reason was. She would only leave it to the captain to make a decision. Ma'am Sikatron has rare natural white hair, and she's an unsuccessful author. She has an outstanding temperament and a quiet personality. She doesn't seem like a beyonder who fights at night. She's also very brave and very firm. Even when facing death, she doesn't flinch. Ma'am Royale is very similar to Fry. They don't talk much but are very concerned about their colleagues. Yes, except at the card table. Brett is the best at writing reports among the clerks. He's a romantic gentleman. Even though he's been married for 15 years, he still loves his wife very much. I think he'll live a good life because he lives by the maxim that the less he knows, the longer he'll live. Cesare Francis is our carriage driver. Despite being a civilian staff member, he often encounters dangerous situations. Therefore, the captain handed over the matters regarding the purchase of goods and applications to him. He doesn't make his presence known, and perhaps this is the key to his survival. I occasionally think about it. If it weren't for the things that happened later, I would definitely still be living in Tingen. I would work on time every day. I'll be on duty to man the basement, and I would deal with the few cases that crop up while playing cards with my colleagues. I would occasionally accompany Melissa and Benson to watch a play or a circus show. If I can come home early one day, I'll study cooking. That's a huge hobby of mine. When the weekend comes, I might come to visit you and talk about the history of various fields. It's a pity that life is always pushing us forward and making us face changes.